All right, so we're back with those stages of clay. I forgot I had all these other pieces ready, but I didn't have a leather hard piece. So I went and found this plate that one of the advanced students has thrown on the wheel. So again, she just covered it in plastic bags because she's wanting it to get set up in order to trim it on the wheel. Okay, so the difference is this clay is not, like again, I can't wiggle it, whereas this, I would be able to wiggle or squeeze. It still has about the same color as the plasticky clay, but it is holding its shape well, which is this plate, and it's gonna be a lot stronger for when she flips it over and uses a trimming tool to kind of trim this on the wheel, okay? So the way that we achieved this is she just covered her project, again, just in a plastic bag. So she threw the plate, yesterday, covered it in a plastic bag, and then I'm looking at it today, and it is that leather hard stage. So this stage is really helpful for carving details and then, just texture and things like that. You can still attach pieces when they're leather hard. So again, if you remember, or maybe we haven't done this yet, but when you get to the slab project, you will want to get your slabs to be leather hard before you attach them, because you're wanting them to stand up straight and not be flimsy like they would be if they were this plasticky clay. So leather hard is ideal for any type of construction where you need pieces of clay to hold their form. So you'll often hear me telling you to let your pieces get leather hard between classes, right? So what that means is don't use those damp paper towels, but continue to use those plastic bags, okay? Because that is really going to get it to that in-between stage, because again, what you don't want is for your piece to dry out completely. And I cannot express this enough, but I still see projects every year that dry out completely, okay? So what that looks like, so again, this is our leather hard stage of clay versus this, which is a bone dry piece of clay. So the first thing that you can notice is the difference in color, right? So this leather hard piece is again that darker color, which is showing us that there is still water in it. Whereas this piece is bone dry, and again, it looks like the color of a bone that you would find in the desert. And the form of this piece, okay, is really, really like sturdy, well, seemingly sturdy, right? But is actually very breakable at this stage. This is the stage that your pieces get to before I fire them in the kiln. So this plate being bone dry shows me that all of the water has evaporated. When I touch it, it is not cool to the touch, versus when I touch this, or when I touch this, I can very much feel the moisture in the clay. And you'll hear me talk a lot about trying to prevent pieces from blowing up in the kiln, and this is exactly why. If there is water in the clay, the water will explode when it is heated up. That is why we always want to get our pieces to be bone dry before we fire them. But again, you only want your piece to get to this stage after you have graded it with me, because it is really difficult to make any changes to it. You can't even carve your name into it very easily when it is bone dry without breaking it. So that is the third stage of clay. Then the fourth stage of clay will be bisqueware. So B-I-S-Q-U-E, kind of like another term for bisque is a soup with cream in it. So if you think about cream is white, bisque is usually white as well, with the clay that we use, which is gray, but it fires white, okay? So this piece, don't worry, this is the piece I made, so if I break it, it's on me. This is now ceramics, right? So all of these other pieces that I showed you are different stages of clay. Once it has been fired in the kiln, it has officially become a piece of ceramics. It will never change from this shape. I can't soak it in water and reclaim it. The only thing I could do would be smash it on the ground, and then it would no longer be this plate. So this, again, is that bisqueware piece. So traditionally what we will do is I will fire all of your pieces one time, then you will glaze them, then I will refire them. So again, the difference in color is pretty subtle, but you can still notice, okay, this again is more gray. This is actually a slightly different clay because it was used for the wheel, but, or this is a slightly different clay. But you'll notice that this one is much whiter than the gray one. And then if you looked at the bisqueware compared to the leather hard, you can see a huge difference there. So again, bisque, B-I-S-Q-U-E, is the stage of clay where it has been fired once but not glazed, okay? Then the next stage would be for you to glaze it. So one thing to note this is someone's bobblehead from this year, oh my God, I almost dropped it, is that your glazes are gonna look really light and really chalky, as you can see here. This is actually black, this is like a bright red, white, we've got an orange basketball with black on it, this is like a bright green. So your glaze is actually gonna look really, really light and really, really chalky as you're painting it on, okay? And that's totally normal. I do have test tiles throughout the room to kind of show you examples of what the colors look like. You are gonna be mixing a lot of your own colors, so the first piece that you make will kind of be an experiment to see what your colors look like. But before they've been fired in the kiln, they will look like this. So really light, really chalky. The main thing to note with glazing is that you always wanna do 3 coats of the glaze, because remember, well, we haven't gone over this yet, but glaze is essentially a mineral that fuses to the piece and turns into glass when it is heated up. So it's not the same as paint, but you definitely need to always do 3 coats if you want the colors to be bright and sealed. And then you never want to glaze the bottom of anything where it touches the table, because just like the glaze fuses to the piece, it will fuse to the kiln shelf, and then I won't be able to get it off, and I'm gonna have to like either break it, then it's gonna have a bunch of gunk on here and ruin my kiln. So that's worst case scenario. So again, this would be bisqueware that has been glazed and not fired. Okay, so that's kind of like your 4th stage. And then the 5th and final stage is your finished piece. So after I have fired it a second time, this is kind of what your glaze looks like. So the colors are really, really bright. Again, to show you just the difference here. Again, in the red versus this one is pink, but so really, really bright, really, really shiny. Again, you have not painted the bottom because this is where it sits on the shelf. And at this stage, the clay is also food and water safe. So again, obviously for your sculptural pieces, you're not gonna be eating or drinking off of them because they don't serve that function. But when you make things like your cup and saucer, any other, your coil vase, any other projects that you are gonna be putting food or water in, this stage gets those pieces to the point where they can be fully sealed and you can eat or drink out of them or put flowers in them. So this is an example of one of the coil vases, okay, that I did as an example. So again, it does have water in it and you know, there's flowers in it and everything. So this is like that final stage of glaze fired work. So again, really shiny, the colors are really bright. Again, so this is an example of kind of the colors that you might get because you're having to mix your own colors. So again, the greens might not be as bright as those primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, but you can still get a lot of really interesting colors throughout. And again, 3 coats of glaze in there. Okay, so to review, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say 5 different kind of stages that you will see your clay / ceramics in. So that very first stage is plastic clay, so squeezable, moldable, you know, reclaimable. Second stage is leather hard clay. Okay, you achieve this by just putting your project in a plastic bag. Again, plastic clay, you keep it plastic by using damp paper towels and a plastic bag. Leather hard clay, you get it to be leather hard by letting it sit just with the plastic bag. Bone dry clay should be achieved only after it's turned in and it will be completely dried out, no water in it. Bisque clay, so again, think about bisque as being like a soup, like again, like clam chowder has cream in it, cream is white, bisque is white, has been fired, is now ceramics. Bisque that has been glazed, so again, really light color on the glazing, but it is ready to be fired. And then your final piece, glaze fired ceramics, okay? So those are the basic, you know, stages of clay. I just want to go over a couple of other things that you will need this year. So you're going to need a plastic card. So again, if you have your ID card from last year, that would work. If you have an old gift card, you know, please don't use like your current debit card. And if you don't have one of these, it's fine. We can always find something else to work, but they do come in really handy. So I do encourage you to try to find something like a plastic card. I am going to give you a popsicle stick. I'm going to give you a little container that has slip in it, which is watery clay. Again, I will either have you make your own slip in class or I will give you some to depending on if I have some where you're at. If you do not have any slip, all you have to do to make it, like you just saw me doing, is add water to dried up clay. So it can be a great way to kind of like gather any of your clay dust at the end of class, put it in your slip container, add a little water, and it will become slip by the next class. Because remember, you're gonna need this to act as your glue when you're doing those 3 S's. Let's see what else. Oh, I'm gonna give you a sponge on a stick. So this will be a really helpful tool for you to have throughout the year for smoothing and things like that. I'm also gonna give you a ruler. So these things, since they are new items, I am gonna want them back at the end of the year, so take good care of them, okay? And then you are also going to need a shoebox. So hold on one sec. So, you will need a shoebox, preferably, I mean, this one is actually kind of skinny, so preferably a bigger one, but you're gonna need a shoebox to keep all of your projects in throughout the day. So if you have this like tissue paper in there, it's honestly kind of a bonus, because you'll be putting your clay, again, once it's wrapped in those paper towels, wrapped in those plastic bags, again, let's say this is sculpture or whatever, in there, you're gonna be putting all your tools in here, and your name will be on it, and this is what will be on your shelf in the damp room that you will grab every day. That way you have your whole own kit. Nobody else is going to be touching the tools that you're using for the whole year. It also keeps your project safe inside the box so that nobody messes with it. If somebody bumps it, it doesn't knock over. So it's a really good just kind of added security measure. And it's a great way to just keep all of your stuff together. And then the last thing that you're gonna need is a fabric swatch like this. So I should have plenty to provide for you, but if you do have a spare piece of fabric, again, this is canvas, could just be an old t-shirt that you cut up, that can be really handy. And then speaking of old t-shirts, if you do have an oversized shirt or an apron that you have available at home, I would recommend that as well. I am planning on having some aprons available depending on how many I get returned to me this school year, but I'm not sure if I will have enough to give every single person one because of the larger class sizes. So if you wanna have an apron, I would definitely recommend bringing either just an old large t-shirt or seeing if you can borrow one from your home for the rest of the school year. Let's see what else. I think that's mostly everything. And then if you do have a cup for water, this would be handy too. I do have some of these available this year, but again, I don't know if they're all gonna be gone because the classes will be significantly larger when I see you. So a small Tupperware, yogurt container, any type of small dish will be perfect. Again, preferably something that fits in your shoebox so that you can have it every day, have your own water cup. So again, we're just trying to minimize shared materials as much as possible, just to keep everyone safe. So I think that is all. If there's anything else, hopefully I tell you in class. So again, always, always, always cover your projects in a plastic bag. If you're trying to keep it damp paper towels and a plastic bag. And remember, you only want your project to get bone dry, so as white as a bone that you would find in the desert, once it is turned into me and finished, because this is a really breakable stage that you want to avoid at all costs. All right, that's all. Thank you.